Welcome to Le Grand Voyage with Chateau Mallartic La Gravière. What are the grape varieties in a bottle of Bordeaux, white as well as red? Because there's rarely much of an indication on the bottle, and that's deliberate. These wines are Bordeaux, they're not Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or Sauvignon Blanc. But also, they're almost always blends. At least two varieties, sometimes four or five. So why are almost all Bordeaux wines blends? And when I say almost all, because there are some exceptions, some very smart exceptions. A few estates in Pomerol and Saint-Emilion make wines entirely from Merlot, but you can count them on one of Homer Simpson's hands. The overwhelming majority of wines from across the region will have several grapes. There are lots of reasons, but three or four really stand out. The first is that different grape varieties like different soils, and Bordeaux has several different soils. If you have a lot of gravel, then you want to plant Cabernet Sauvignon. If you have a lot of clay, then you want to plant Merlot. If you do it the other way round, you'll have miserable Cabernet Sauvignon that will struggle to ripen, and overblown Merlot that smells of prunes. As well as a blend of different soils, Bordeaux has a blend of different weathers too, from site to site and from year to year. In the past, winemakers wanted a variety of grapes in the same way that gamblers put chips on lots of numbers in roulette. If you lose on one, you'll have a backup in something else. Some varieties ripen earlier, so you can get wonderful fruit in case it rains later on in the season. Others ripen later, so you can take advantage of an Indian summer before you harvest them. They have different susceptibilities to pests and diseases too. These days growers are adept at managing their vineyards to keep them at bay, but in the past they could wipe out whole plots. But also, the wines of Bordeaux, particularly red Bordeaux, are more akin to an orchestra than a solo. Different grapes play different parts. The stark, brassy trumpet of Cabernet Sauvignon needs the mellow bassoon of Merlot. Cabernet Franc has a leafy, herbal character, adding a kind of rustic interest like a viola. Petit Verdot adds chocolate and licorice and violet perfume to a blend, but you want a little, not too much, the percussion section perhaps. Each one of these will express itself a little differently with each vintage, and so each one will form a slightly different blend each year. There are even varieties that, like musical instruments, have almost died out, but they're making a comeback. That fresh perfume of Malbec is the harp of the Bordeaux orchestra. So we have grapes adapted to the region's different soils and planted across sites with different microclimates, each one adding something distinctive to the final blend. And that's where man and nature meet. If you want to produce something juicy and fresh for early drinking, you'll perhaps have a Merlot-dominated blend. If you want to make something longer-lived, stentorian and bold, you'll perhaps build your blend around Cabernet Sauvignon. And the whites. Don't forget the whites. Semillon is the most important white grape in Bordeaux. It's the heart of the sweet wines of Sauternes and Barsac. And that waxy, layered, complex component of the dry whites of Graves and Pessac-Léognan, where it melds perfectly with the oak barrels. But it can be a bit flat, so you blend it with the vivacious character of Sauvignon Blanc, and you have something that adds up to more than the sum of both parts. You might also keep a bit of muscadel. It adds a floral dimension to dry wines and helps lift sweet wines in difficult years. Bordeaux's blends are an example of 2 + 2 = 5. Some people get terribly exercised about the exact composition of each blend each year, but that's not the point. They're not here for us to try and pick out how much of each bit is in there. The blend is there to be enjoyed like an orchestral whole. That's why they're blends. Join me again tomorrow when we'll talk more about Bordeaux's blends with Le Grand Voyage, Chateau Mallartic La Gravière. I'll see you then.